Hey guys, hope you're doing well. This past weekend, I finally had the opportunity to play in another Scrabble tournament down at Princeton. Hadn't been able to compete for about half a year because I've been busy with school throughout the entirety of the fall. But now that I'm back at home, I figured I should probably get competing again. And in this tournament, I ended up going 6-1 with a spread of about plus 870 or something. So a pretty good showing, good enough to win first place in my division and take my rating up from 862 to 924. And here we're just going to briefly run through the 7 games that I played and kind of analyze them and figure out what went well, what didn't go well. So this is round one. I'm playing Sharon Friedman. She's going first. She opens up with cover. Here's my rack. For the most part, I have notes of my full racks so that we can more thoroughly analyze my moves. I guess in retrospect, I probably should have played something like Zep. My mentality was I was hoping to score more with the Z, so I ended up going for Poe, which is admittedly not a great play. And then Sharon plays Cruel. With this rack here, I do make my top move of Za. She plays Man down here. I was hoping that she'd give me an open N on the board so that I could play Tyrosine or Serotiny. I'm probably mispronouncing those words. I don't want to do anything like this, obviously, opening up the bottom. So what I instead go for is I just play U. I drop my Y and O here, leaving a 5-tile leave that should pretty much guarantee me a bingo. And then she plays Jin up here. I draw HM. I really should be finding hermits. Not a word I've come across in word study, but obviously a word I should know. I instead play him, once again leaving, ERST. I should bingo with that. She plays Agio. I have seen both errants and ranters, and I did see that errants could play down here. At least hooking the E on man to form main, but I wasn't confident enough that errant took a back S because I think of errant as being an adjective, like, oh, Trevor Story had an errant throw to first base. Hashtag relatable. Connecting Red Sox with Scrabble. But no, anyways, I just play porn here. Great word. Very proud of myself for that. Very clearly a fish for only 7 points, but I probably should have had more confidence to, I didn't know that man took a back A hook, but I should have had at least enough confidence to do the E hook and play errants, down on the bottom. Anyways, Sharon, these 4 tiles she plays next. And then finally, I draw into a rack that I'm confident I'll find bingos from. I have a lot of double doubles hooking porns. I play Reslate, word that I'm confident in. Obviously, there's 4 other valid words that you can form here, making the blank an L. So Reslate just happened to be one that slotted in perfectly. But Sharon actually challenges it, and at first I thought that she was going to challenge whether porn takes a back S, which I was uncertain of, but I checked afterwards and it does. She actually only challenged Reslate, which I knew for a fact was valid. So she loses her turn from that. It just says she passes here. I don't draw the greatest replenishment rack. I play Bang up at the top of the board, and then she plays War down here, which I like because it pretty much shuts down the bottom of the board. She'll need a very precise in particular play hooking the M column if she wants to bango there now. Noria, not a word I'm familiar with. I just play Hour here. Defensive play continues to shut the board down more. Hold for man, which obviously takes a number of hooks. She draws the Q and plays Qua. I, unfortunately, not familiar with Fano, Feino. See, this is just obviously a really dumb play. I'm not going to give her all that counterplay on the bottom of the board. Instead, I just play Aqua and an E here to block. She finally uses the E hook for Cage, which pretty much tells me that, there's still 3 S's in the Blanken scene. I'm like, she's got to have at least one of those by now. But there's not much I can do. I just play Oof here, leave a good lead. She plays Elk in the top of the board. I draw TTE here, so I just dump 2 of my T's with Petty. I know it does open some counterplay here, But you have to remember, like, from my perspective, there's only one O and one U left, so it's not going to be very easy to overlap with the P here. Um, she plays Fa in the bottom left of the board. With this rack here, Lutea is a word I'm not familiar with, but I do see loot, and I just play that. And then she plays Vet. And then I draw into Bingos. Katsina, I've never heard of. Nasties, that would have been a very cool play if I found it. I just play Strains from the bottom of the board. With DWI, she plays Dewey. I don't know what the other tiles on her rack were. And then here I play Bio. She plays Sick. And the funny thing is, if she doesn't play Sick, I'm actually not sure if I have an outplay. But she gives me an outplay to just play Did. Oh, turns out Diddy is a word. I could have gone out there, but not a word I would have found. And that gives me a nice 272 to 414 win. So that was a pretty good start. And that was game 1. Then I think game 2, if I can get all of the games to load here. Okay, so game 2, I'm once again going second. I'm playing Julie, and Julie starts off with a 4-tile exchange. And here, my best play is probably to play something like Restamp. But I'm not entirely confident that Restamp is good. I see Tampers, and my best spot to play is obviously to play here for 78. But this opens up a ginormous S-hook, and I'm not Josh Sokol, so I'm not willing to risk doing that. So I play in a safer location for only 74. After her 4-tile exchange, Julie very clearly draws 7 consonants, because she only plays Dart for 5. This is one of the few turns where I actually forgot to keep track of my leave. So all I know is I have EAU, and I play O. And then she does indeed have the S, so she drew the S before I did. I was very happy that I didn't give her that huge triple lane to play Stampers in. She just plays Sat. I am saddled with ease. I've never heard of Mammy. I guess I could have played Femme. I instead choose to play Fee here. That bails her out because she has duplicated O's and N's, and I give her a spot to play Onion. Still struggling with E's here. I drew another E. And here I just play Meme for 19. She plays Sext with it, which is a good play. I could have played Trave here. Wasn't really looking to keep 3 vowels, so I just play Eve here to drop 2 more of my E's. She plays Peta, which is an interesting play. I have, this great insertion play that I don't think I would have found. I also have Owlier, presumably meaning more like an owl. Never heard that word before. So instead what I do here is I play Rewrap at the top of the board. And at first I was, I noticed that I actually opened up like 2 Z-bombs, one here, and then one when I played O. But as it turns out, both of these are pretty much impossible to overlap in both directions. Like, you would need, I don't even know if there's a play that would allow you to, play horizontally, ending with the Z, just because the W and the R are right next to each other. But anyways, she plays Wob. Here Fizz is my best move. I probably should have played Fizz. Instead, I just dropped the Z for 32. And then she actually, in credit to Julie, she has a great find here of Involved for 74, making her blink a V, which is definitely not the intuitive thing to do. So that was a great play on her end to just about even up the game. And then I make my top move of Filch here. She is struggling with G's, I presume, because she plays Go-Go for very few points. And here's an interesting move that I was talking about with Julie in post-game. And that's because I spot both of my top moves of Kibla and Baji here. I actually misdid the math when I was calculating Baji. I thought that Baji was 54, which would have made it 2 more than Kibla. But I ultimately chose to go with Kibla because I obviously want to get rid of the Q. But I guess Baji would also open up an S-hook. But in retrospect, I feel like I maybe would have played Baji instead. Because what I'm scared about with Quay is if she has the U, she's going to be able to score well here. And sure enough, she has just about the best 4-tile play that she could make there of Quay for 48. And that kind of neutralizes my 50-point play. But anyways, the show must go on. There's still Farah there. I could also play Zhao here. But I played Join to kind of burn through some more tiles, get rid of the J, hopefully draw into the second blank. She plays Sly here. I don't draw particularly well. I didn't know that rewrap took a T-hook, so I don't do that. Still not finding fair. Okay, here would have been a great play, but I didn't want to leave two I's and two R's, especially with two I's left. I just play work here. She plays which I think is a fantastic play, because just looking at the unseen tile pool, she could pull into ING bangos. The one that I, would be most worried about is huddling, which she could totally have. Now, I am embarrassed about this play. I have plays that I'm clearly not going to find with my level of word knowledge, like Hydrotic, or Victoria's, or Diuretic, but I really should be finding Historic, and I really should be playing it on the board. Instead, I just play Hick to make sure that she can't bingo. She tries to do some fish with Oi, but then with this rack, I instantly spot my top out bingo of Toiletry. It was a very quick find. Very happy about that. I obviously had other bingos here. I could have played something like a rod. Move that down more. I could have played something like erotical here for only 68. Obviously, I could have played petiolar. These are all words that I'm familiar with. These are all words I've seen before. But Toiletry, definitely my best bingo. And I catch her with all 7 of her tiles, which nets me an extra 20 points. And I win game 2, 436 to 310. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I've had 2 back-to-back 100-plus point wins. Haven't played perfectly in either of those games, but I've played well enough. I've found bingos when I've needed to, and I've put myself in a very good position spread-wise. So that takes me to game 3. I'm playing Steven Wieland. He is going second. I'm going first. And this is really where I'd say my first really questionable move is. I should know all of the threes. I do, and then I forget them. I always ask myself, what's valid, what isn't, and I play a phony 3 on my first move of the game. And I felt so ashamed when I realized that after the game. But in the moment, Steven also thinks that AUK is valid, which it isn't. The 3s that begin with OU are OUD, OUD, and then our and out, which are both common English words. So he actually just plays tail here. Here, I do have a bingo of dermoid, presumably some word pertaining to the skin. Nope, a cystic tumor. Go figure. But it's not a word I'm familiar with, so I play mod, which is still one of my top plays. Over the board, Steven plays oxtail. As he told me over the board during the game, he's like, I know I shouldn't do it, but this is such a cool play, I have to do it. And the other thing to note is that oxtail takes a front F for foxtail. This is something I was aware of, and I was hoping to draw an F and make a stylish play there, but it just didn't work out. I don't draw well. Once again, I'm saddled with ease. Probably should have played edge here, but instead I play greed for fewer points than leaving a worse lead. He plays Atria, which makes me think he's struggling with vowels. I make my top move of guide. Here he plays easy. Begot would have been a great play here, but I make my next best move of job. Here I don't know what rack he had, but he ends up exchanging here. I draw into the queue, which isn't ideal. I could have played Chi here for... I probably should have played Chi here for 33. But I instead played Chi. Chi's here for 32. And then he plays real here. I draw not so well, so I drop an O and an E here. It's actually my best move. He plays pro. Here I have 3 bingos. I have Spoliate, and then I have Latigos and Odalges. I spot all 3 of these. I go against Spoliate because I'm like, if he has a D or an S, I'm going to be in big trouble. He can score very well there. And so I play Odalges, which is a very high probability 8-letter word. But he might not... I'm not sure if Steven is as familiar with it because he holds for about a minute or 2. And then eventually he lets it go. He plays own here. And now I'm thinking, if he's not as familiar with words such as Odalges, which are relatively high probability, let's see if this rack, which has 4 7s, you have recited here, you have diester, you have dieters, and you have re-edits. I could probably play something like dieters, which is probably my best move, but I'm like, I'm going to play the more obscure diester and see if maybe he's not as familiar with that and will consider challenging it. In retrospect, I mean, Pre-edits in Priesthood are words I'm not familiar with, although I probably could have intuitively assumed pre-edit would be good. Um, this I'm never going to do. Obviously, I'd never open up a triple-triple. Probably should have played Diaster here. Um, but if I was going to play something down this column as I did, I probably should have played Dieters, which I know doesn't take a back S because it's already plural. And then here he exchanges 3 again. I draw into the first blank. I play Beef down here. He plays Vast. I draw terribly. I totally should play Wop here or Hup here, but I completely balk and play Vow. He plays Idly, which I'm okay with because, there's only 4 times, the 3 A's and the O that actually can overlap with that Y. I really should be finding Hup here, but instead I just play Aw, which isn't a great move. And then my 2-tile draw actually gives me the second blank. And so here I correctly intuit that I should just burn one of my blanks here with the Z. Zuz is probably my best move because it gets rid of the U. Instead, I play Zep, which probably isn't as good because the P is a good tile to have here. But it doesn't matter because I draw really well. I spot all 3 of my 71-point bingos here of Automen, Autopen, and Out-Earn. Normally, and I was talking to a friend who was at the tournament about this during, he was like, you should probably play Automen here because the other 2 words, Autopen and Out-Earn, both take a back S, but here all the S's in both of the blanks have played, so I can freely play Autopen. He plays Mag. I do the really, really stupid thing of challenging it because for some reason I can't figure out my 3s today. What I'm clearly conflating it with is Ma, MAH, and Mal, MAL are both invalid. Mag, MAG is perfectly good, so I lose a turn. He plays Vin. I probably should have played Inch here, but I thought it would be cool if I played Czar. And then he goes out, he catches me for an extra 14 or so points. And all said and done, it is a 199-point victory for me. So at this point in time, these are the 3 morning games, and I'm currently 3-0 with the spread of nearly plus 500. I haven't been playing my best, as we've seen, but I've been drawing really well. And my opponents haven't been drawing that well, and maybe they've been missing a few plays, but I don't have full information about their rack, so I'm not entirely sure. All I can tell you is about how I have been playing, and that's kind of the purpose of this, is to be, an educational exercise. Now, starting off the afternoon, I have a match against Glenn, and this is my 1 loss, and I'm very curious to see how the analyzer evaluates this, because I felt like this was a completely winnable game that I completely botched in the pre-end game, and I'm sure we'll see here how many opportunities I actually had to win. Glenn opens with Peace. For some reason, I completely forget that Peace takes a front A, and I completely miss Caddy and Cade, which I was hoping to play before he went. I probably could have played Cade here still, but I instead just chose for the shorter QI. He overlaps it with Kin. I know Kin takes an S hook. I know it also takes an A hook for a Kin, but for whatever reason, I don't find that in the moment. So instead of playing a great move here like Audios or Fidos, I make a really not as great move of Foul, which scores very poorly. And then Glenn exchanges. I don't know what he has. I completely missed Naiads here, which I should find. I know that if you have V6000E, you can actually play Naiads ending in ES for a bingo. But for whatever reason, I balk at that and make a much worse move of AIDS, still taking out the spot though. He plays Hog for a good score, getting the H on the triple letter. I don't draw well. Korai is, I think it's like a Greek statue or something. No, I'm thinking of Koros, another word. But Korai is not a word I'm familiar with. Could have played Uric here. Instead, I just play Uni. ARS should be a good leave. But I don't draw a bingo. Fiat would have been a great play here. It's an S hook, which I do have, and ARS is a fantastic leave. Instead, I make Fur, which isn't a terrible move, still an S hook, but it does leave an extra A on my rack, which will come to plague me when I have 3 A's, and I don't know bingos with 3 A's and an X, so I don't find Ataxias here. In retrospect, Taxa is definitely the move I should have played. Instead, I play just Ah, which opens up the triple lane for him to play Lemon on, I guess he could have played those 5 tiles down below for more points. And then to my AA play, I draw AA again. And now I'm just on tilt. I drop the A's with here, which now kind of the mental part of the game is getting to me, because I'm just frustrated that I keep drawing all of these A's and like I'm not having any good plays. But he plays jute here. Toxemia is not a word I've heard of. The conditions of having toxins in the blood. Axiom is a play that I saw and I just didn't see a spot for. Playing Axiom here definitely would have been the move. Instead, I play Moxie here, which isn't a terrible play, but it lets him get a pretty nice overlap. Finally, I draw into a good rack where I'll know all bingo. Not going to find Ignatius or Granitas, so instead I play Tahines, Tagines, however you pronounce it here. He plays Robe for a good score. Here's another mistake I make. I can definitely slot you down here for 45. Instead, I play it here for 15 fewer points, which is an awful play. He plays Turd. I don't have a great rack. Maybe I should consider playing Killed here. I wasn't just going to drop my, L for Loft. There's nowhere on this board to bingo. I mean, I have a lane here through the L and the E, but with 2 E's already on my rack and an L already on my rack, maybe I could, get LL words ending in like LLED or something. But instead, I just try to score and work towards getting the blank by playing Glide. He just drops off an O and an H. Still not much great stuff here. Maybe should play Rain. Instead, I make a bad move of Gran. And then he plays Celt. I must have hit the wrong. And then here is where I make my big mistake in the pre-end game. At this point in time, I've managed my clock very well. 2 tiles left in the bag. I have 15 minutes on my clock. I have to make some play that maximizes my chances of winning. As I see it, there are 2 things I can do here. It's a close game. I'm down by not even 20. I'm down by only 18. What I can either do is that I can either try to fish off a tile to draw into a bingo, or I should just play as many tiles as I can and just try to outscore him. Now, if I want to try to fish for a bingo, what I'm thinking is I want to get rid of the V, because the V is a terrible tile to have in the endgame. But there's nowhere for me to bingo on this board. If I want to bingo, I have to open up a new lane for myself. The way I see it, the most probable way to do it is to just play I here for 6. But even then, I'm going to need a very precise fit with the S in, the 6th spot. So probably not a great idea. That tells me I should probably just try to score. Kevel is a word I'm familiar with. I should totally play something like Kevel. I'll set up my S to maybe score in the triple lane next turn. But instead, I make the idiotic move of Rev for only 6. In my mind, I think Rev is good, because it only plays 2 tiles, which means I still have a chance to bingo next turn. And to my knowledge, it's the only 1 or 2 letter play that I have here that gets rid of my V. Why is this play terrible? Because even if I draw into a bingo, which we'll see that I will, I'm going to have nowhere to play it, and it just does not score anywhere near enough points. So for me, this is a very informative move on why sometimes it isn't great to fish, and why sometimes I should just take my top move, where as long as I draw like 1 vowel, I'm probably going to go out next turn. I'm probably going to catch him with clunky tiles like the P or the V or the W and win. And unfortunately, this move does doom me, because now he has a nice spot to drop his V for only 18. And here, there's just not much that I can do. Speaking of, I must have misannotated here. I think I already had the blink here, because I saw that I could have played 11s on my rack, so I must have miswritten this down. But it doesn't matter anyways. This is the rack that I have in the end game. And chase is a word that I don't know, but I probably should. I had to play something that I was familiar with, such as phase, or ideally rehash, that would give me a shot to win in the end game. Instead, I play Jeer, hoping that I can go out and hoping that he'll make a misplay or something. I actually did see that he had typo here, but I guess he didn't find it. But that was something that I did see, and I was like, there's nothing I could do to address that. Instead, he plays woe here. And at this point, I can go out with kins. I can, I have several plays to go out with. But instead, I try to score as much as I can with lemons. Probably not my best move. It allows him to play rep for 9, and then I go out with Lorne. And all told, I lose by 18. Not a great game on my end. Definitely shows the many ways in which I'm still a novice level player. But definitely a very informative game that I have a lot to learn from moving forward. And ultimately, these are meant to be learning experiences. So there's a lot that I am taking away from this game when it comes to how I can improve in close pre-endgame situations and how I can really make smarter decisions. But part of Scrabble is being able to come back the next game, not stay on tilt, and just keep your eyes on the prize and just focus on winning the next one. And I get off to a good start when I play my top move of Ivory against my next opponent, Emily. And then she plays How here, and here is where I make a really silly mistake that I kind of have to tell myself, don't worry about it, just move on. And that's here I have a number of bingos here. 77-point bingos that have triple overlaps here. Tootsie, Footsie, Oolites, plays that I definitely would be able to find. And I end up playing Oolites here for only 66, which is crazy because that same word plays 2 spaces over to the right for 11 more points. And about a minute after I hit my clock, and announced my score, the play's over, I realized that, and I'm like, well, shoot, I just have to not let it bother me. Not that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, 11 points could make a difference, but that's not the mentality you can think of when you're trying to win a Scrabble game. You just have to be on to the next turn. She drops off A's with I see milled here. I see melted here. I'm not playing either one of these. I'm not opening up a triple lane with a 70-point lead, so I play mild. Unfortunately for me, she does have a bingo of inflates here, which is terrible because she really doesn't have any move that even scores within 60 points of that. But she finds that. I don't have a great rack. Probably should play luge here. Glute here. I'm okay opening up a triple lane now that the game is close and now that, I'm kind of hard to score well with a G in your third position. Instead, I make a not great move of gut. Luge definitely would have been a much better play that I totally should have gone with. She plays alcove here. Citable is probably a word I should find. It's a word that I'd be confident of without the E here. I'm assuming that citable is good with only one E. But it's a word that I should find. I do think to look with ABLE as a suffix, but I just don't find it. Celibate is also a word that I should find. They're not words I've come across in word study, but they're words that one who is my age should know in the English dictionary. Instead, I make a play of cab, which scores alright. It scores 27, but it's a far cry from a bingo to get me back in the game. She plays guys, which is a peculiar play, for only 8 points. And then here, I don't have a great rack. Probably should play something like Tibia, or Albeit, or Abelia, all of which are words I do know. Instead, I play Belie, and then she makes another peculiar, only 8-point play of Evite. And by now, I've drawn quite well into a bingo. I probably should find and play Gassier. I don't even know how to pronounce a medieval weapon, which makes me think it's French and is pronounced something like Hiarm instead of Gisarm, but word I've not heard of. This is a play I'm never gonna make. I'm never gonna open up a triple lane if I'm going to take a 100+ point lead. But I ultimately decide on to just play Organize here, which she holds for a while, which I find confusing because Organize is a very common word. I guess if anything, she wasn't sure if it could be spelled with an S, but this is one of the more probable 8-letter bingos you will find. She plays Hedge. I draw some, high-scoring tiles, but a lot of clunk. I make my best move of Cat. Here, I could play Wins, but this is not something I want to do. Wins is a noun, which means it takes a back S, and the last thing I want to do is open up a bingo lane. So I just play Pew here. I was also considering trying to balance my rack by playing Pwnd here, Pwnd. which would give me the best leave, but I figured it just scores too poorly. I'd rather play pew here. Then she makes another interesting move of pawn for only 6. I'm not sure what she's going for. I'm happy here that I spot my top move of Ditz. There's no risk here. There's no Ys or blanks left, so she can't hook Ditz with Ditzy. And then here, she plays Zex. And the second that she hits her clock, I challenge it off the board. I don't even hold. I know that Zax is good at ZAX. I know that Zek is good at ZEK. I know that Zex ZEX is not good. I asked her about this after the game. What Emily told me, she was deliberately playing it because she was down by a lot and needed something in desperation, and that she was testing my word knowledge. I don't know if I believe that. Doesn't matter. The point is, I challenge it off the board, and then I play Zen here, which I believe is my top move. She ends up just playing her X and E elsewhere on the board for fewer points. Do would have been a great play here. X is also would have been a phenomenal play here, but not a great leave. And as it turns out, despite being 30 fewer points, Ren is not even 1 point less on equity than X's is. And then she tries to make a desperation opening here of Jin. I have an S, but I see that I have to block it because she could backhook Jin with an N or a K. I was wondering if souffled, S-O-U-F-L-E-D, was a word. It might be good with 2 Fs, but I ultimately do decide against it and make my top move of fused. She plays more here. Kloof is a word I've never heard of. Croony is, I don't even know what. Former monetary unit of Estonia. Kolo, these are all words I don't know. So I just play core here. And then she plays Ray, and I go out with Lone. And that ends up netting me a 210-point win. So after a narrow loss, I'm back in the win column with a nice big win. Alright. And then moving on to game number 6. Here we are. In game number 6, I'm playing a kid named Luke. And when I say a kid, I mean this kid is literally 8 years old. I'm beyond impressed by the fact that an 8-year-old is getting out and playing competitive Scrabble. But I'm excited. I'm like, let's see how this 8-year-old fares up against me. So it opens up by playing Flirt. I, like many people, am not good with my FJ words like Fjord and Fjeld. Fjeld, I don't know how to pronounce it. But I make my next best move of Jelly here. Luke plays just Je. I don't draw very well. I draw only, I draw, like, pretty much all consonants, and they're pretty clunky. I can play bad pure here. I end up playing it horizontally. And now here is Luke's biggest mistake of the game. He has a bingo here of besting. Only plays in one spot. And what he does is he places his down on the board, and I start tracking tiles. And then he picks up his tiles and moves them here to play breasting, which is peculiar for 2 reasons. First of all, it's invalid. And even if you thought there was a chance it was valid, you'd know for sure that besting is just way more likely to be valid. Like, besting, everyone knows must be a word. To best someone, and then you make the gerund of it, you add ing. Breasting, I'm not entirely sure what that would mean. The other peculiar thing about it is it scores 5 fewer points. Even if you were confident, even if breasting were a word and you were confident of it, there's no reason why you would play breasting over besting. But I challenged it off the board because I'm like, there's no way that breasting... I'm sure breasting's good if you spell it B-R-E-A-S-T-I-N-G. But it's not. And now here I have plays like... I guess these are actually... well, no, I challenged it off the board. So now I have plays here like epics. But now that I've seen all 7 tiles on his rack, what I'm thinking is I have to make a move that blocks besting and doesn't give him another bingo. Because he only has 1 spot to play besting. And in my eyes, the best move to do that is Iced. As it turns out, Iced is kind of a mistake because it does leave open the possibility of playing Bagnettes. But granted, the fact that that thought didn't dawn upon me while I was playing the game, let alone the thought of playing Bagnettes did not cross the mind of an 8-year-old. So he just plays Bet here instead. Obviously, I know that he's leaving ing and an s on his rack, and I'm like, there's probably not like there's such a high probability that he gets an ing bingo starting with s and hooking flirts, and I can't really block that. So I'm just like, whatever. I'll take my best move of puny. He plays waste, so he clearly whiffs on his. I mean, he obviously had SAWING something. Guess there wasn't a bingo there. Here I make a really peculiar move. There are plays that I definitely could make that are most certainly words, such as escaper. Although, to be honest, a lot of these are words I haven't come across. Like careens is a word I should know. I instead make the very peculiar move of recases, which turns out to be not a valid word. I would have assumed it was valid. I wouldn't play it if I didn't think it were valid. But Luke, he's only 8 years old. He doesn't hold. He doesn't challenge. I was told by other opponents that he actually was challenging plays earlier in the day, but I guess he also thought it was plausible enough that it wouldn't be worth trying to challenge. He just plays Wig there, which I think he's given up on trying to get an ing bingo at this point. And then I make my top move of Hazel here for 66. Huge score. Very happy I found that. He plays just L here. I have a terrible rack, but I get bailed out by Avatar. I'm happy that I found that because it's a great play. He just plays Nom in the top corner. I don't draw well. I just try to score with my W by playing Ow and Aw. And then he makes an interesting move of Tin, which is interesting because it scores fewer than 10 and it doesn't open anything up. If anything, I would have considered playing Tiny down the end column to open up a triple lane. Now here I'm close to a bingo, but I don't have one quite yet. So I shut down the top lane of the board by just playing Euro. Here he plays Drying to open up some space. I have a few moves here that score well. Instead I choose to play him here. He plays Ink here, which kind of shuts down this part of the board. Now you need, a 7 beginning with an O, which isn't that common. I draw the Q. I just dump it. He plays Poe here. Here is a mistake. Gratiny is a word that I know, and I also know it's anagram of interage. But I'm not even thinking to look through, like, the R, let alone, like, the R not being the first letter. So I just play Gay here. At this point, he finally gets down a bingo of stories, and here's the move that I'm most ashamed of. I phony with Outdine. I know for a fact that Outdine is not a valid word, because if it were, it would have been so high probability that I most certainly would have come across it in my word study. I do not need to phony bingo right now. It would make sense if I were caring about my spread for the purposes of it being a tiebreak, but at this point in time, I'm 4-1. The only other person who's 4-1 is Glenn, and at this point, my spread is like plus 600, and his spread is minus 100. So there's no way in which, I'm actually going to need to improve my spread. I'm already going to have that tiebreak if push comes to shove. I'm also playing an 8-year-old. I really shouldn't be bullying an 8-year-old playing a word that I know is so plausible to be correct that that I don't have to worry about him challenging off the board, because he'll be like, Outdine, that seems like a plausible word. He's not going to challenge it off the board. So I kind of feel like a bit of a jerk for playing Outdine here, a word that I know is invalid and that I'm almost confident that this 8-year-old is not going to challenge off the board. Sure enough, he doesn't challenge it off the board. He lets it stay. And then he plays Fave here, and I go out with Do. All said and done, it is a 160-point win for me, and I'm kind of feeling like an asshole for deliberately bingoing against an 8-year-old in a game I was already winning by nearly 100 points. But, people can argue over whether I should or shouldn't have done it. But I think I stand by it. I think knowing when to phony bingo, or just phony in general, is a part of the game. And it's a part of the game that I want to get good at, being able to bluff well. And eventually the kid's going to have to learn that, people will try to get away with stuff on him, and he'll eventually come around to learn to challenge those types of words off the board. But you know what? He's an 8-year-old playing in competitive Scrabble. Good for him. That's pretty cool. Anyways, at this point, we are going into my round 7 game. At this point, I've already clinched the tournament. Glenn lost his round 6 game, which meant that I was 5-1 and he was 4-2, and I had about 900 points on him in spread. So it would have taken some catastrophic loss on my end and some ginormous victory on his end for him to have the tiebreak over me if we both finished 5-2. But for me, the mentality here was the stress was off. Let me just try to have fun and just enjoy playing the game. So I open up against Marilyn, my final opponent, with my top move of Glow. She plays Door. Here I have Agedness, which is not a word I'm familiar with, although one could reasonably assume what Agedness means from taking a look at it. Instead, I just play Dean. She plays Quinn. Could have played Shivs here. Not a word I was confident in. Also, S's are great until you have 3 of them on your rack, and then you just want to get rid of them. So I just play Hives here. Marilyn told me after the game that she was very close to having a bingo here. Not a triple-triple, but just a bingo elsewhere on the board. But instead she plays Bloused. I redraw an S, so at this point in the game, we're about a quarter through the game, and I've already gotten all 4 S's, which you don't want to get all the S's at once, because they're kind of clunky when you have 3 of them on your rack. Instead, I just play Outs here. She plays Fires. Here I make my top move of Chords. She plays Mott. And then here, I finally draw into a bingo. Pre-X is a word I wasn't confident in. It would have been a great double-double for over 100. But I'm happy that I still find Carpets. I remember that Glow takes a front A for a Glow. And I pull ahead on that. She plays Zen. Here, I totally should have played Aha. Instead, I play Raw, which is worse. A, because it scores fewer points. It scores 39 as opposed to 41, and B, it leaves an extra vowel on my rack. But it doesn't matter because apparently Marilyn doesn't draw well. She exchanges. I don't have a great rack here. Otaku is just a word that I've never will have heard of. A person in Japan who's highly skilled in computer technology. It's a word I'll probably forget too. Like, I'm not going to remember otaku. I could have played Koi, but to me it was just so... You know, the idea of leaving a rack of A and you just wasn't palatable at all. So I instead just play AI here. She plays Yet. Here I play Bunks. Nop is a word I'm not confident in. Bunkos I've never heard of. Nap also not confident in, so Bunks is really the top play I could have made with the word knowledge I have. She makes a fantastic play of Jilter. And now here I have a terrible rack, but to me now that Jilter has opened up the board again, my thought is, what if she has a bingo ending in O or ending in ON? I feel like I have to block that. So I play Ava, which makes it impossible to play a bingo here because it would require an overlap with a V, which obviously does not exist. There are no 2-letter words involving the V. She tries to open up by playing just Mole. I have a terrible rack with 3 ends. I probably should play Nyx here to get rid of one of the ends. Instead, I make my high-scoring move of Picks, totally anticipating that I'll have to exchange next turn. She plays Beer. Sure enough, I do have to exchange. I exchanged 5. I forgot to track which 2 tiles I was keeping on my rack, although one of them had to have been the N because I did leave 3 N's on my rack. Anyways, I draw decently here. I draw the blank, which is great. Egomania, probably a play I should have found. Haven't come across it in word study, but I know it's the word. Instead, I just play Goa. She has the other blank, and she has, very high-scoring moves here, which would totally get her back into the game, like resaying, or repaying, or relaying, which are all, very, very common words, along with readying. But instead, she plays Yearling, which is a full 30 points less. And at this point in time, I know that the bag is empty. I don't have any bingos, but I know I'm going to outscore her. I probably should play Wheat here, because I know she'll go out right away. Instead, I only play Way, and she ends up going out with Join, which, honestly, credit to her. Join is one of her 2 top outplays along with In here. Nice little stylish play, an extension of Joe. And when all is said and done, I net myself a 54-point win. Although, yeah, that didn't sound right. It was a 46-point win. I forgot to count the 8 tiles, or the 8 points she got from my leftover tiles. And so when all was said and done, it was a 373 to 327 win. And as I ultimately said, I think I ended up winning the granted the lowest division of the tournament. It took my rating up from 862 to 924. And I think in retrospect, when I look at these games, I can be proud of some of the plays I made. I did find some good bingos. I was happy with a lot of the top plays that I made and some of the more obscure words that I found. But there's obviously a lot to learn. Definitely have to do a better job at reviewing my three-letter words and being very on top of those, both so that I don't phony as I did to start off round three, and so that I don't falsely challenge as I did with Mag. And other than that, just keep playing online games to kind of improve my feel for actually playing games, keep improving my word study, and just looking forward to continuing to get better at playing competitive Scrabble. But that is all that I have in store for today. For anyone who stuck around to listen to my whole 45-minute recap, thank you, and take care.